Hello, students. I want to talk to you today about elements of fiction, which you're going to start this week. You see the chapters in your book, Literature to Go. I want to give a brief summary of each of these elements of fiction, which are critical in analyzing any form of literature. First, let's start with plot. Plot is what happens in the story. Some call it the storyline. So when you think about the story you read last week, Story of an Hour, you can see how each of the events come one after the other, and that is exactly what plot is. And it has to do with time, from beginning to end. Those are all the events that come in between is what's known as the plot. The next element of fiction is theme, and it's the moral or main idea of the story. Themes do not provide any plot developments and apply to many types of stories in almost any genre. So basically, the theme is the main idea of the story. It's very important that you learn how to identify the theme in a story so that you can talk about why the author wrote this story. Stories can have more than one theme, and so in your reading of these stories, you will get better at identifying themes. The next element of fiction is characterization. And here is dealing with the characters of the story. The main character in a story is called the protagonist. She or he is always involved in the main conflict and its resolution. The person opposing the protagonist is called the antagonist. So always be aware that there are different types of characters, but these are the most important, the protagonist and the antagonist. When we think about another element of fiction, it's called point of view. And there's different types of point of view. There's first person point of view. The narrator tells the story and is a character in the story. Third person, omniscient. The narrator is not a character in the story, but can tell you the thoughts and actions of all the characters at all times. So he or she can actually know what another character is thinking. And then there's the third person limited. The narrator is not a character in the story, but can tell you the thoughts and actions of a few key characters at all times. Those are the different types of point of view that you will come across. Another important element of fiction is setting. The setting provides us with the when and where the story took place. In addition, the context or historical background in which the story is set provides us with additional plot information. So here, setting really informs us about how the characters are going to behave. For example, in Story of an Hour, Mrs. Mallard is a wife set in, and the story is set in the Victorian age, which is late 1890s, early 1900s. That's important because that informs us on how we view Mrs. Mallard's actions. So setting has a profound effect in how we look at certain characters. Another aspect of, it's not an element of fiction, but it's a part of the plot, is this notion of conflict. So there's different types of conflict. First, there's external conflict, which is character versus character, character versus society, and character versus nature. If we think about character versus character, the protagonist in the story experiences conflict with others, especially the antagonist. In character versus society, the protagonist in the story experiences conflict with society as a whole. And then another type is character versus nature. The protagonist in the story experiences conflict with the elements of nature. So if a character is battling a certain weather pattern, a hurricane or tornado, then that would be character versus nature. There is internal conflict in which the protagonist of the story experiences conflict with his or her conscience. Okay, and many characters have this kind of conflict, internal conflict. I've just given you a brief overview of some of the most important elements of fiction. As you are reading this week the stories, pay attention to these elements of fiction and write about them in your journal responses. Make sure that you quote from the stories in order to support your viewpoints. That makes for a more convincing argument on your part. I'm very impressed with all your journal responses. I look forward to reading them this week, and good luck. Thank you.